Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. I'm super excited about this topic, diet, right? That's a huge part of self-care and, just maintaining that healthy lifestyle. So I've got a lot of questions for you today. One being the most obvious, but we have to state it. Why is it important that people focus on what they put in their bodies?
The one thing I always say about food is that you can choose not to move your body. You can choose not to manage stress. You can't choose not to eat. So we have to eat every single solitary day for life. And so really the decisions that we make based on what we're going to put on our fork, on our plate, they can impact our mental health, depression, anxiety, they impact our microbiome, they impact our goals for longevity, and they impact, I always tell my patients, our why. So we all have some why that is really meaningful to us. A lot of people's why is health related. And it looks at maybe generations before them. I don't want to get Alzheimer's like my mother did. I don't want to have a heart attack at 45 like my father did. So what we choose to eat and why it's so important to focus on different foods is because we want to reach that why. We want to make the decisions that are going to make sense for us.
I love that. That's great. And I'm so glad too that you pointed out the fact that there's research showing now, and the conversation is getting really big around this, how diet impacts potentially mental health, right? And especially when it comes to the, like you'd mentioned, the biome in your gut and the role that plays in serotonin production, and just, I think it's really intriguing, especially since mental health is such a focus for so many now. Coming out of the pandemic and where we are, I know a lot of people really making that a huge part of their self-care for 2024, myself included in that. What I really want to talk about are mushrooms, not the psychedelic kind, but they're very, very popular right now. Mushrooms are. They're in pop culture, right? People are using them in decorations. You see them in fashion, and we're also consuming more of them. Why the focus on mushrooms right now?
Well, I think mushrooms have kind of come back into play of interest. They are a superfood. I mean, we kind of use that word a little bit lightly, right? There's a lot of superfoods out there. But mushrooms have come back because we're starting to see mushrooms included in products and foods we haven't seen before. We're starting to see them in coffee, for example. So mushroom coffee is really popular. I mean, I've been a dietitian for over 22 years. And I think in the last year, I've heard a lot of my patients say, hey, I'm using this mushroom coffee. What do you think about it? So even though mushrooms in and of themselves are very healthy, they're a fungus. We know that there's evidence of benefit to our gut health, of benefit in reducing inflammation. We're now starting to see them kind of inserted into other foods so that we can have these other foods and get the benefit of mushroom too. From a dietary perspective, especially for patients that I see on a day-to-day basis, they're also very low in calories, low in carbs, there's no sugar. So they're really not meaningful in terms of looking at the nutritive substance of calories. Where they're meaningful is their nutrient density. So they've got high nutrient density, and fungus tends to be something that maybe we're not eating enough of, but we have so much evidence from thousands of years of medicinal medicine that fungus is really something we should be eating more of.
Absolutely. Chocolate. Oh, I love chocolate. Chocolate is so good, right? Woo-hoo, right? But chocolate's not created equal. Like milk chocolate versus like an actual cacao. They're very, very different things, but they do all play a role, though, in potentially self-care. So let's talk about the role that cacao now has for people in 2024.
Well, we started this conversation talking about this amazing connection. It's actually referred to as nutritional psychology between mental health and our dietary pattern. And so what we know is that there have been studies showing that the flavonoid content and some other compounds found in chocolate actually help to relieve subjective stress. And it makes sense, right? I mean, that's kind of when we think about comfort foods and we think about a stressful day, we're typically thinking a chocolate bar sounds so much better than a kale salad, right?
Yeah.
So there's sense to it. But when we think about cacao, we think about the bean. The more the bean is kind of broken down, the less benefit we're going to get. So I picked up some today at the store. This has 70%. These are just kind of cocoa pieces. Chocolate pieces, if you will. So you always want to look for 70% or greater. When you get to about 85%, that's when it becomes a little too bitter and it's just not as palatable. So that's like pure cocoa, but it's really the flavonoids. So we know that flavonoids are included in things like chocolate and included in things like cranberries. Flavonoids, we know, can help reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. We know it can help reduce the risk of certain cancers, benefits to mental health. So I think where this comes into self-care is, let's not look at chocolate as a bad food. Let's not look at food as good or bad in general. So
I
that's
like
kind of
that.
rule number one, right? Food is not good or bad, but let's appreciate that some foods can help benefit us and some foods may actually harm us in some way, whether that's physical or mental.